Hello everyone, my name is Matt, also known as the Survivor Guy, and today I'm going to be showing you how to master Survivor's Leap of Faith challenge using physics.
For today's challenge, you're going to dive into the ocean, one person at a time, climb to the top of a tall tower, then leap off it while grabbing a key.
So this topic was actually recommended in the comments of my last physics video, saying that a lot of survivors try and reach that key in this challenge and always fall short. And the most common thing that I always think of with this challenge is Adam in Winners at War, who tried like 30 times to reach that key and just could not do it.
Adam falls short! And he misses again!
The comment was also curious about the balance beam section at the end and how physics plays into that, and both of these are great topics and bring up a lot of interesting things regarding physics, so let's dive into it. So starting with the jumping part, this is actually very closely related to what I was talking about in the last physics video, so go check that out if you haven't already, where we broke down the projectile motion of the ball in that challenge. And what a projectile is in physics is it's basically just an object that is being launched in some direction. So the projectile in this particular challenge would be you, or I guess whoever's trying to get the key in Survivor. By jumping off that beam at an angle, what you're essentially doing is creating some velocity vertically and some velocity horizontally, and your angle determines how much of that velocity is vertical and how much is horizontal. So if we were to take a closer look at this, so if this arrow here represents the angle that I'm jumping with, by changing how high or how low that angle is, we can see that it changes how much of my velocity is going up and how much is going to the side. Now, to get the most height, obviously I would go straight up, but that key is a little bit further over the edge too. So by changing the angle, we need to figure out the best way to get enough height for the key while also still moving horizontally to get further off the edge. Now, one of the most important things that I always teach my students when we're covering this unit is the optimal angle for going the furthest distance with a projectile is 45 degrees. The reason that 45 degrees is the most optimal angle for launching a projectile is because it perfectly divides your vertical and your horizontal components of velocity so that they are the same. So let me show you what I mean. Let's take this cannon as an example. If I were to set this cannon at a 30-degree angle, and then I were to fire that cannon, what we'll see is that it doesn't go very high in the air, but it has a lot of horizontal speed, so it reaches a distance of 20 meters. Now, if I were to launch that same cannon at an angle of 60 degrees, what we're going to see is that it goes a lot further up into the air, but it has less speed horizontally. So it may have more time to go a horizontal distance, but because the horizontal speed is so much slower, it reaches the same distance as a 30-degree angle, which is just 20 meters. Now, if I were to take that cannon and put it at a 45-degree angle, well, that's the optimal point where I maximize my time in air while maintaining a pretty high horizontal speed. So if I fire my cannon, we see that I reach much further than the 60 and 30-degree angles, therefore reaching the optimal distance of my cannon. Now, this optimal angle for projectiles is for getting just that, the most horizontal distance. But if we look at what we have here in Survivor, the key isn't really that far horizontally from the beam that you're jumping off of. In fact, if we take a look at this image, it's actually the height that seems to be the problem for survivors more often than it is the distance. So what's the solution here? How can we possibly gain the height that we need to reach the key while also making sure that we're moving horizontally in order to get that key? Well, Brooke actually spoiled the solution in the comment that she left on the last video without knowing it. See, she specifically said that in this challenge, the survivors run and jump off of a platform in order to grab the key. And while sometimes they do this, there are a lot of times where they walk to the edge, stand there, and jump without moving. What you may notice watching Survivor is that those who actually run and jump tend to succeed more often than those who stand on the edge and jump without moving. And there's a reason for that. back when we first started talking about this, I mentioned that you can't just jump straight up because your key is a little bit further out, so you need some horizontal distance. Well, there is actually a way where you can get that horizontal distance while still jumping straight up, and that's called momentum. If you get a running start, you're going to generate some momentum. And momentum is basically the idea that your motion is carried through. An object in motion wants to stay in motion. So if you run on that platform, you can jump almost straight up, guaranteeing that you get the height you need while maintaining that forward motion that allows you to grab that key more easily. Obviously, this is not a perfect solution because running on a narrow beam, if you're not good at balance, may cause you to fall off. But that's actually a fantastic segue into the second part of this challenge, which is making your way across a narrow beam.
You'll then cross a floating balance beam and race to the finish.
Now, the balance beam part of this section has to do with two different physics concepts. The first being center of mass, and the second being torque. Center of mass is kind of what it sounds like. It is the center point for your mass. The human body is not a perfect sphere. It is not by any means a perfect shape. You have different body parts going all over the place, having a different amount of mass. And what center of mass is kind of the statistical average point where most of your mass is located. So for example, if I had a perfect sphere, then my center of mass would be located here, right in the center, because all of the mass is perfectly spread out in all directions around that point. Same idea if I were to have a square, my center of mass would still be right in the center because all of my mass goes out kind of an equal distance from that point. Now, if I were to look at a rectangle that I dropped a very heavy dumbbell on one side of, my center of mass would look more like this. Because there is more mass on the right side of that rectangle, my center of mass is shifted to the right. Typically, the center of mass for a human being is located right below the belly button. However, it kind of varies a little bit based on your body type and your body size and whether or not you are male or female. Typically, women have a lower center of gravity than men, just due to all the lady parts that are going on down there. There's a lot more interesting things on women down there than there are men, and I'm not a biology teacher, I don't want to get into it. But that's actually why women are usually better at balance than men are, because they have a lower center of gravity. Now you may be thinking, Matt, why does it matter if your center of mass is lower? How does that factor into anything? Well, that is where torque comes in. Now, I've talked about torque a little bit in an earlier physics video, but basically what torque is it's a force that is applied to an object at a distance that causes that object to turn. So if I were to try and walk across this balance beam, my center of mass would be about here. And that is a significant distance from what I'm calling the ground, which is where the balance beam is. The further your center of mass from the ground, the more the torque caused by the force of gravity is going to act on you because it's a further distance from your pivot point, which would be your feet on the ground. If I were to have a lower center of mass, now there's less distance between the ground and my center of mass, so there's less torque that's going to be pulling me one way or the other, causing me to fall off balance. So by crawling across the beam or sliding across on your butt, what you're doing is you're bringing your center of mass a lot closer to that balance beam, which means torque will act on you less, making it easier for you to maintain your balance. Now, it's worth noting here that there is a bit of a trade-off. Obviously, crawling across the beam or sliding across it on your butt is going to take longer than walking across it would. However, making it in one go is certainly faster than falling off and having to swim back around and try again. So it really just depends on how confident you are in your ability to balance on a very thin beam that's also moving all over the place because it's on the water. So, let's sum up what we've learned here today. First and foremost, if you are jumping for that key, you're going to want to get a running start. This allows you to jump at a higher angle, giving you more upwards velocity, making it easier to get the height necessary to gain that key, while still maintaining momentum, which allows you to go far enough out to grab your key. Secondly, when making your way across a balance beam, it's important to get your center of mass as close to the beam as possible. This is because the further your center of mass from that balance beam, the more torque that acts on your body because of gravity, making it harder for you to stay on the beam. So the easiest way to get across that beam would in fact be to sit on your butt and scoot across, as Brooke pointed out in her original comment. So there you have it, the best way to beat Survivor's Leap of Faith challenge. If you liked the video, please drop a like and consider subscribing. It would help me out a lot. And if you have any other challenges that you want to see me analyze using physics, let me know in the comments below. I do check them, and I will most likely follow up on your idea, unless it's stupid. So just don't give me a stupid idea and we're all good. Thanks for watching, everyone, and if you work at CBS, give me a call. Until next time.